in the hockey-rich town of Trail, British Columbia. A fierce competitor, carving out an 18-season career in the National Hockey League, becoming a reliable goal scorer and a respected leader. From lighting up the scoreboard in junior hockey to making his mark with 6 different NHL teams, including memorable playoff heroics on Long Island, his relentless drive and sharp hockey IQ really did set him apart. After hanging up his skates, he seamlessly transitioned to the broadcast booth, where his candid analysis and deep understanding of the game made him one of the most recognizable voices in hockey. I think you'll know him right away. His name is Ray Ferraro. Ray, thank you for joining me on this podcast. It's really a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, it's great to see you, Tony. Thanks for the nice words and the introduction. I'll tell you, I watched you many nights, and it's a thrill for me to talk to you.
Thank you so much. That's very flattering. Thank you. I mentioned Trail, BC, and I always wonder how it became such a center of hockey. Let's talk first about your family. Was it different for you growing up in Trail? I know they came from Italy, and I, because my mother is Italian, and she didn't know hockey from anything. So I always wonder, what is it about Trail that lights up the hockey scene? Did the game play a really big part in your beginning?
It did, and what's interesting about that, my dad, I don't ever recall him putting on a pair of skates. He loved the Montreal Canadiens. His favorite player was Dave Keon, though, and I didn't have a curved stick until I was 12. He always encouraged me to have a pass on the backhand like Dave Keon does, and I became like at 5 or 6 years old, I think my cousin was playing, and my dad's sister's son, and they said, well, why don't you we'll bring Raymond to the rink. After a few times, they said, geez, he seems to really love this. You should, and so Dad was building a business with his father and his own brother, a concrete business that's still there today. They started in 1947, and so he was busy and long hours, and then all of a sudden he has this kid who's going to play hockey who he doesn't really know anything about it. But the one thing, Tony, I think that we had in Trail, and it was just an amazing place to grow up, is that we had this lineage from the 38 championship team, 1938 World Championship team that went to the 1961 team that won the World Championship. And those were we didn't quite realize in town. They were just the guys around town. We knew that everybody called them the 61ers. But if you wanted to go into the arena, the head of the Parks and Recreation Department was Addie Tambellini, Steve Tambellini's dad. If I needed equipment, I went to Seth Martin, the goalie's sporting goods store. Oak McIntyre, he did all the skates. He scored the game-winning goal in 1961. So hockey was everywhere that we turned. And so it was one of those things, like it touched me, and naively, there was nothing else I was ever going to do. My mom kept this scrapbook we have 4 boys in our family, and she kept this scrapbook in elementary school, grade 1, what I want to be when I grow up, and my teacher's name and my best friend's name and all that stuff. And in the what I want to be when I grow up, it had like fireman and doctor and policeman and nurse, whatever boys and girls wanted to do then. And I've got written in 6-year-old handwriting, NHL player. And I've never wanted to do anything else.
But you did choose hockey over baseball, didn't you?
Yeah.
Didn't you play baseball?
Yeah. Oh, I love baseball. Baseball was, I just loved it. I mean, I've fallen away from the game a little bit now because I don't really attach myself to the way the game is played as opposed to the way it used to be. I'm a big fan of they've got the pitch clocks, and so the game moves a little quicker. I miss starting pitching the way it used to be. But another thing in Trail that we had was we were blessed with these amazing coaches. And I don't know what they were doing in trail. I'm not really sure. Like Willie Krause ran the track and field team forever. And there was Commonwealth Games and Olympic athletes that came out of this program. In Little League Baseball, we had a man named Andy Bolesky, and my God, I learned more from Andy, I think, than any other coach that I played at in any sport. And we went to the Little League World Series in 1976. My brother went in 1981. I just loved baseball. But when I got to be 15, we went and played in the Pacific Northwest tournament, and I thought I could be a college player. So we go to this tournament, and there's Oregon, 2 teams from Oregon, Northern California, and we're there, and I'm looking at a couple of these players, and I'm like, that's a different level. Like they were just at a different level than we were. I would have loved to have gone and played at college, but it was pretty clear at that point, like my future was going to be in hockey.
Did you have your hockey heroes?
Bobby Orr. I wanted to be Bobby Orr forever. I remember sitting with Dad, watching, because the Bruins, they won the cup in 72, which they beat the Rangers. Like I remember Bobby Orr's goal as clear as I'm watching it now. He spun around this forward named Bruce McGregor in Game 6 and scored and made it 3-0. Jerry Cheevers had a shutout, but every year the Canadians beat the Bruins. So my hero was Bobby when he got hurt, and went to the Blackhawks. I've been a Bruins fan. I don't know why, forever. I love the Boston Red Sox. Cheered for them for 30 years, Tony. I didn't know it was going to take so long for them to win. But Orr was my guy. And then Rick Middleton was a forward with the Bruins, a really tricky, slick player. As I got, out of, like, by the time I got to later in life, if I could have played like anybody, it would have been Pavel Datsyuk. I just loved Pavel Datsyuk. His smarts, his skill, his ability to change the game. I guess I liked guys that could do things I couldn't do, and so I would always aspire. Like I'd play against Joe Sakic and I'd watch him and go, man, I can't believe he can skate and shoot the puck like that. Like it's just, I got the same stick. It's just, it doesn't do the same things. So those were my guys for sure.
You spent some time with the Brandon Wheat Kings, 1983-84, and you had 108 goal and a 192-point season.
Yeah.
Did you ever think then that you would ever make it to the NHL? Was that part
Tony,
of it?
There's a funny story to this. So 2 years prior, I was playing in Penticton. I'd left Trail. I had made the team as a 16-year-old, and my dad thought, he said, you know what? He had this piece of advice, and it stuck with me it goes to my kids now, that I've passed on a little bit, is that, stay in the place you're at until you master what you're doing. So when I won the Rookie of the Year when I was 15 in the Junior B League at home, and I wanted to go to Penticton at 16. And Dad said, just master this league. Just stay here. Be at home. And just, you'll improve here. And I set a goal record that has been tied but not broken in that league when I was 16. Then when I went to Penticton at 17, if you can imagine this, Tony, I didn't know it was my draft year. So this is how in the dark the Ferraros were about what the heck was going on in the hockey world. Mom and Dad and I were, and my brother's like, you're just going to play, you're getting better and that's good. And you go to the next league. And so in January of that year, my coach was Mark Pezzin. And Pez says to me, if you keep playing like this, you're going to get drafted. And I said, when? My birthday's August 23rd. So I thought I wasn't eligible until the following year. He goes, no, this June. I had no idea. So I got drafted out of the 5th round out of the BC Junior League. I was the 5th player drafted out of that league that year. I won the scoring by I don't know, 50 points. But I was little, and nobody was drafting little players then, right? They're like, he's not going to make, he's going to be too small. So I went to Portland. We won the Memorial Cup. When I was drafted, I decided not to go to U.S. college. I had a scholarship to Northern Michigan University, and naively, remember I told you about being 6 years old and not wanting to do anything else. I said, well, the quickest way to the NHL now is to play junior and sign a contract. And I don't even know what I was thinking. I didn't realize that I was 152 pounds and nobody really thought that I was going to play. So I went to Portland. We won the Memorial Cup, and then I got traded to Brandon. And, Dad was there again because I didn't want to go. It was too far from home. And he said, we talked late into the summer. I wasn't going to go. Kelowna had an expansion team, and I was going to be able to manufacture a trade to Kelowna, much closer, of course, to Trail. And Dad said, I think you should go give this a try. This team wanted you. They're going to give you all kinds of opportunity to play. Now, he overlooked the trade was 5 guys from Portland for 1 for Brandon. I was one of the 5 guys. He overlooked that part. But I went there, and Tony, I got 3 goals the first game, 3 goals the second game. And when I left that year, I'm like, I think I got a real chance at this. I think I can do this. And, but again, totally naive what was coming in front of me. Not even close to any understanding of how brutal the game was, how tough it was, how physical it was, how strong the players were, all that stuff. I mean, I came from Trail and I went to these other places, and I'd never seen an NHL game until I was 19 years old. Never been in the building. We went to a game, and from Brandon, we drove into Winnipeg. The Montreal Canadiens were playing, and Brian Hayward had a 2-0 shutout. And that was my first NHL game that I went to. And I had no idea. I was in awe of watching watching Larry Robinson play. And, in their red jerseys. I'm like, man, I don't know. I think I can do this. But it was miles away by that point.
Let's jump up to the time you went to the Whalers. A couple of guys, memorable players, Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen.
Yeah.
What was it like playing beside those guys?
You know what was cool about that team, Tony? I laugh because, when you think of something from long ago and it triggers up a bunch of memories, we were all the same age. Ronnie's 1 year older than us. But there was Ron, Kevin, myself, Ulf Samuelsson, Dave Tippett, Brad Shaw, Paul McDermott, Dean Evison. We were all 20 or 21 years old. So we were all these kids just learning life and learning the game, and we were together, and the team was terrible. So they called us all up and said, just play and let's see what we have. And we ended up playing the better part of 6 and 7 years together, all of us. And in that time, guys got married and had their first kids. And but Ronnie was different because he was only a year older, but he felt like he was much older. He was so mature, very not reckless about anything, very, very thoughtful, very intentioned in everything he did. Kevin, on the other hand, was this whirlwind, Kevin Dineen, whirlwind of energy and disorganization. Impossible not to love the guy. He was just one of those guys, no matter what was going on, he was somehow in the middle of it, even when he didn't have anything to do with it. And he was a ferocious competitor. He was 5'10", maybe 180 pounds. Back then you fought, and he was fighting guys that were much bigger than him. He was a 40-goal scorer a couple of times, and we were really lucky to all come together at that same point in our lives and in our career.
You had a 40-goal season yourself with Hartford, then with the Islanders as you went on. What was different in those years that helped you reach that level of the game?
Oh, I think if I knew at the time, I probably would have done it again and figured it out. It's way more fun scoring 40 goals than 22. That's for sure.
Sure.
There is an element I will explain when I'm on the radio here or TV or whatever, that if a guy scores 40 goals once, he's not a 40 goal scorer. He just had a career year. I scored 40 twice. If you were expecting 40 from me, you would have been very disappointed each year. But if you wanted 27 goals, I could give you that. Like, that was my career average. And I would be in that mid 20s to 30 range a lot. But those years, you get deflections, you get rebounds, you have stretches where you'll be goals in 5 or 6 straight games. They happened in both of those years, right? Like, there are times when, you just go to the rink. I can't even explain it. And you would I would know I'll probably score tonight. Like, what would make that happen, right? Like, it's the confidence that is in you. Unfortunately, you can't tap into that all the time. And I would say in those years, I started well, had some confidence, had good power play years, had some good bounces that in the times when you're starting to maybe sag a little bit, you get a bounce and you score again. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm back at it. I'll tell you though, like, to score 40 goals that was just the best feeling, to know the team that needs you to score and that you can deliver. Those were good years.
You play for 6 NHL teams. Is there one you felt most at home with, the one you felt really comfortable with?
I guess, a couple of, like, in the early part in Hartford, I would say yes, years 2 and 3 and 4, like, after you become established in the league and you settle in a little bit, I just loved living there. I loved the teammates that we had. That would be one. The other was just playing for the Islanders, playing for the legendary Al Arbor. He was, he was the best. He was demanding and firm and direct and funny. I felt almost like he was like a father figure to a lot of us. And when Al said something, there was no trying to figure out what he meant. Those couple years with Al, I would say were my favorite. They were my most successful from a team standpoint and personally. But just playing for Al, I just loved it. If I had to pick one place to live, though, it would be LA. I was there 3.5 years, and we lived in Manhattan Beach, and man, I loved it there. I mean, what's not to love? You go to practice in shorts, you come home, and stop for lunch, and it's sunny out. It's a pretty good place.
In 1999, it was the Atlanta Thrashers. That was a brand new franchise. What was that like, joining that team?
Pandemonium, chaos. We were so bad. The first year, I tell people, we won 14 games, which wasn't bad, except there was 82. And that's a lot of losing. We had lost, I think it was 19 or 20 in a row. Like, we had a couple of ties in there, but, and we broke the streak. We were in Colorado, who was going to go on to win the Stanley Cup. They had Forsberg and Sakic and Foote and Waugh and Blake and Ray Bork was going to come shortly thereafter. And we beat them in overtime. And it was the 20th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice win. And, so they had it was on TV all day. And I scored the winner in overtime, and I was doing an interview after, and I said, everybody's talking about this win in Lake Placid 20 years ago as a miracle on ice. I'm like, this was the miracle on ice right here. And I got home, and remember the old phone answering machines?
Oh, yeah. I
had a message on my phone from Al Michaels. And he was a Kings season ticket holder, and somehow he had heard, and he left a message. I had it forever. And but just playing there, it was almost like it was. Not almost like it was. We were so over our heads as a team, that we could play really well, like the best game we could, lose 4-2 with an empty netter. We'd be on the bus and go, well, we can't play any better than that. But it got to the point where it was almost like gallows humor. If you didn't laugh, you would cry all the time. And we had, some of my best friends came out of that team. Andrew Burnett is the head coach in Nashville. It's would be my closest buddy in the game. And my God, we had so much fun. Like you have to think, we won 14 games. Like each game was a celebration, because who knew when the next one was going to come? It was really it was a strange existence.
Another part of your existence was playing with Messier and playing with Gretzky. You have any Gretzky-Messier stories?
Actually, I miss Gretz. I got to L.A. He had been traded about a month earlier. And I saw it described once, and it's true. It was like getting to a New Year's Eve party at 12:30. Like everybody's had their good time, and it's 12:30, and Gretz was gone, and we were a rebuilding team. With Mess, two things stand out. One was he didn't have to do anything except walk into the room, and everybody's eyes were on him. What he did, what he said, how he conducted himself. And there was such a confidence and a surety to what he was doing, right? Like it was so impressive to watch. I will remember the night he scored 3 goals against Calgary. His third one was his 500th goal. And it was one of his old patented wrist shots down the right wing. He'd get up on his one leg and shoot it on the far side over the pad on the far side. And so after the game, we were getting dressed, and we were by the mirror and shaving or whatever. And I said, "Do they not have your highlight tape? Like, have they not noticed you're going to shoot it over there?" And it was just so funny, because it was like a highlight. It was like we'd seen that same goal 100 times, and but his personality, he was a mean competitor, and it was kind of nice to be on his side for just a short while. Now, it didn't turn out so well for me there. I played 60 games. I had 24 goals, I think, and they made this trade. They sent 4 of us out to LA, which turned out to be a great place for me, but they wanted their old Oiler guys back there. And so they brought in McSorley and Curry, and Shane Churla was in that deal too. So I would have liked to have stayed in New York longer, but as it turned out, I ended up in LA. I eventually met Cammi, my wife, and I wouldn't have met her had I not gone out there either. In the big picture, what do they say? You find something good in all of it. And, I sure did.
Tell me more about Cammi. I know she's now with the Vancouver Canucks, and she was a goalie, was she not?
No, she was forward. She was forward.
Okay.
So she was the Cammi Granato is, if people aren't aware, we've been married 20 years, and she was the captain of the '98 Olympic team, U.S. team, that won the gold medal, first gold medal in women's hockey. It was the first year. The medal is sitting in our den, and I pointed out to everybody she doesn't, because she's just incredibly humble. When I describe Cammi, I say she's and I don't mean this in like there's no hyperbole in this, but she's the nicest person I've ever met. She is sweet and caring and competitive in all she does. She's an amazing mom. And there was a time where I felt like I kind of lost myself a little bit. I'm in a new career. I got a new wife. I've got 2 young kids again. I'm in my 40s, and I was kind of lost. And she saved me. Really, she did. She's an amazing woman. I don't know what the hell she was thinking. I was divorced. I had a 13 and a 10-year-old son, and she thought I was a good idea. I'm not really sure why, but for me, it was. It's just I'm very, very lucky. She does a great job. She's with the Canucks. So they have a head pro scout, and he's got all his guys that report to him. Head amateur scout, he's got his guys that report to him. And she marries those two departments through the scouting and the player development staff. And so not so much the team you see, but the team that's coming is kind of what her world is about. And, like, for example, the young Pedersen defenseman, he's a third round draft pick. They came through their development team, and they're really excited about him. They can't wait to see Tom Willander when he comes from BU later this month. And like, these are Lekaramaki, the forward who was drafted a couple of years ago. They can't wait to see how these guys, how they mature, because this is what their world is as they try to contribute to the NHL team, which of course we all see.
All of which leads me to another member of your family, another hockey player, a good one, Landon. Tell me about Landon.
Landon's doing great. He is married now with a 1-year-old. Played 10 years of pro hockey, the last 4 in Germany. He really had a rough go. Really proud that he was able to fight through multiple surgeries, both knees, both sides on his hips. He had some concussion issues, and took him, when he decided to leave the game, I was sad for him, but really relieved, because I'm like, you know what? He gave as much as he could to this game, and the game didn't love him back. And that happens, right? And it's a lousy thing, and it's happened to lots of players. But he took a year to kind of get healthy, and him and his wife have their 1-year-old Luca now. And then he wanted to get into some broadcasting a little bit. And so he poked around a little bit, did some radio, got through a series of circumstances, been working with Dan Murphy mostly in between the periods on the panels on Canucks games. He does radio games on Saturdays with Brendan Batchelor, who's an excellent play-by-play guy. And he's building his way. And he loves it. He's learning. There's lots more to it. It's funny, Tony? Everybody sits and watches you on TV, and they think it's all calm and everything's just smooth and moving along, except the guy in your ear is telling you, I know that story's a minute and a half, but you got 32 seconds moving along, and we got a commercial coming.
Oh, yes.
Well, by the way, what was next is not next anymore. And so Landon's learning all of that stuff, and I'm really happy for him. He's really, really found his footing.
And you were happy as a broadcaster. What took you there? What was the initiation there?
I'll go back to the Rangers and the trade to Los Angeles. So I played for the Islanders for 5 years, and then moved to the Rangers as a free agent. ESPN's centered in Bristol, Connecticut, which is just a stone's throw from New York. And the head of they call it talent, basically the people on the air at ESPN2 was a man named Barry Sachs. And Barry just passed a year ago or so, and he became this like an angel for me. He had seen me do a bunch of interviews, and he was a Rangers fan. And then I got traded to LA, and he called my agent. Now, I'd never broadcast 1 second. I'd done a bunch of interviews, I guess. And he called and asked my agent, would I be interested, since the Kings weren't going to be in the playoffs, of coming to Connecticut and doing 2 weeks in the studio with NHL Tonight. So my agent asked me, I'm like, I guess, sure. Tony, I was still going to play another 7 years. I wasn't even thinking about retirement. And I had no idea or any thought of post-career stuff. I thought I would coach or something like that. And so I got there, and I said, sure, I'll go try it. So I meet Barry. He's this big New Yorker, friendly, but he's got the big accent. He says, oh, you're the Rangers. And he talked like that. He'd go, and he just he was just so friendly and he was encouraging and he'd say, I was good, but you should maybe look at it like this. And it was so great to have somebody like kind of steer where I was walking because I had no idea what I was doing. And so I guess the first year went well. And because the Kings were rebuilding, it's funny how things just work hand in glove sometimes. I wasn't going to make the playoffs again. The Kings weren't. And he said, would you come for a month, the first 2 rounds? So I went for a month. And by the time I was finished, I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I loved it. I was working with Barry Melrose and then John Butchergross came the second year. And so our show NHL Tonight was really good. It was fun and informative. Barry's hit some hard times. He's got Parkinson's and really had a struggle. Man, what an amazing guy. There was nothing that was a problem for Barry. He had this phrase all the time. He'd be walking around swinging his IFB cable, which for people that don't know was the cord that plugs into the talk box so you can listen to the producer. But he'd be swinging it around, and as he's walking around and they'd say, we need you guys to tape something, he'd go, time to make the donuts. And he'd turn around and his demeanor was just so pleasant, and he loves the game and he loves to laugh and he loves to talk hockey. It was really a great introduction into broadcasting for me. And the one thing that I got early on was I decided I was watching a bunch of guys do it, and John Davidson was my goal. I thought JD was the best. And I saw like, he's always really kind of honest, like he's not on one side or the other. He's just kind of right down the middle. And if he doesn't like something, he says it, but he remembers how hard the game is. And so I decided early on that I was not going to endeavor to make a bunch of friends in the game, because that would make it really hard to be honest. If you got to criticize your buddy, like that would be really hard. And so I was just going to try and be as honest as I could and remember that any mistake that I see, I've made that mistake 1,000 times. Like I've turned the puck over. I've taken a bad penalty. I've missed an open net, like all these things. I've lost my coverage in the defensive zone lots of times. It happens. So instead of making the player the brunt of the criticism, there's a way to say, I believe, now that's his man behind him. He's got to take a look here. He can't be focused on the puck. And you can do it in a way that you give the picture without making people think you've got all the answers, because you sure don't.
Tell me about the four-nation hockey. And I have to ask this because people ask me, did I watch it? Of course I did. I watched the Canada-U.S. game. But it was that first 9 seconds or so when the fighting broke out almost immediately. Some people say, they just put that on. That's a fraud. Was that real?
Tony, I'll tell you how real it was. The building was just like, if people have been to games in Montreal at the Bell Center, there's no building like it. The noise, the sound, it was just echoing in there. Everybody was waiting for this Saturday night game. And so the teams, they finish the anthems and they're, cleaning off the carpet and all that stuff. And Brady Tkachuk comes over. He's standing right in front of me because I'm standing on the Canada bench. That's the place for the in-between benches where I stand. And he's yelling at Sam Bennett. And he says, Benny, after this is over, we're going. And Bennett's looking at him and he goes like, what do you mean? Like kind of like his palms are up. He's like, what? Bennett didn't play the first game for Canada. He hasn't played in the tournament yet. He's like, after this is over, we're going. So I don't really know what's going on. I'm trying to piece it together, but we're doing, starting goalies and there's a whole bunch of things going on. Then I can see Matthew across the ice. He's in Brandon Hagel's ear. And I go, oh, I got it now. So they start to fight. And I say to my play-by-play partner, Sean McDonough, I say during the game, like as the fight cleans up, I said, Sean, there's no chance this puck hits the ice before Brady Tkachuk and Sam Bennett are going to fight. And so, like, I knew it because I just heard it. And so Canada didn't know this was coming. The U.S. did, because it was the Tkachuk brothers. And so I figure it's over until Faber lobs that third shot into the goalie, and Miller's looking for somebody to fight. Now, I'm not sure he thought Parayko was going to come out of the pack, because Parayko's a big dude. And but it was stunning. It was real. It was. I'm not. If they took fighting out of the game, I guess I would. Fine, whatever. Like it doesn't drive my interest in the game. But that took poking a stick into a hornet's nest, and it was electric in that arena that night.
Do you hope they do it again?
The Four Nations?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but I believe the next one will be in 28, and that'll be a World Cup. So I would just not suspecting. I know all intentions are it will be more than 4 teams, which is the way it should be. Of course, Canada, U.S., Sweden, Finland. I would think Slovakia will be there. I would think Germany would be there. I sure hope world events settle somewhat, that Russia can be involved. But a bigger tournament is the way they want to go. It would be more like an Olympic style tournament, which we're going to get next February.
Just a final thought from you, Ray, before I let you go. What is it like to be a Canadian and such a huge part of this game?
Humbling. Oftentimes I look like I don't keep much memorabilia, Tony. There's a picture last year. The Panthers have won the cup. Everybody's on the ice. Paul Maurice has got the cup up over his head, and I'm in the background, and I have a look on my face of stuff I don't tap into too much, and that's like a joy of being there, an understanding of the moment that I'm in. Part of it is that I was as blue collar a player as there was, I think. I got that from mom and dad, and I just put my head down and I worked and worked and worked and worked. And pretty soon I played 18 years. And then I started the game as an analyst, and pretty soon I've done 10 World Juniors, and I've done 2 Olympics, and I did the Stanley Cup final a couple times, and I did this Four Nations. And honestly, Tony, when you say that, I take a half a step back, and I'm like, I can't believe this has been my life. It's been, the game of hockey has been my life since I was 5 years old. And to be a part of the soundtrack of the game for the last 25 years, and to be one of, I don't know, under 10,000 players that have ever played in the game. I'm fortunate, grateful, blessed, like all these things that you hear, but I just sometimes I just can't believe it.
Ray, it's been such a pleasure having you on, and thank you for being so knowledgeable, for one thing, and so good at what you do. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm glad I got a chance to talk about my family. I will end with this, Tony. Good things pop up once in a while. Our 18-year-old son, Riley, Cammi and I's oldest, has just committed to Penn State University. He's going to go play soccer there. And we are incredibly proud and happy for him. As I told him when we went for the visitation, he said, are you guys coming? I'm like, Riley, I've never been on a college campus before. This is a big step for me. It was pretty amazing to go see. So that looks like the next stage of Riley's life.
Good luck with that. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Tony, and all the best. And again, it was been you were part of our days more often than you knew.
Oh, thank you so much.